Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining in, and thanks to Joshua for the vote of confidence. Well, my name is Rhoda Michael, and today I'll be taking us all on the design psychology session. It's one thing to, design, create very beautiful design interfaces, another thing to design with psychology in mind. So I'm going to share my screen right now, and please let me know when you can see my screen. Assuming everyone can see my screen,
Yes.
once again, welcome. Okay, thank you. To today's session. So we'll be looking at design psychology, how it affects you as the designer and your users as well. First of all, let's have a look at what design psychology entails. Now we have a very broad kind of definition here where we are told that design psychology is a combination of cognitive psychology, social psychology, and also human computer interaction that approaches user experience design through the lenses of human behavior. So when we're able to understand how different psychological principles work, how they influence your users, how they influence the behavior of people around you, this will help us design products that are going to bring up specific responses and actions which we want from our target users. Today, we'll be looking at a couple of psychologies that affect humans in general, as well as when we look at them, they can also improve our UX. They can also improve the way we design for the users because in the world of UX, we are not designing for ourselves. So we have about five of them, progressive disclosure down to cognitive load. Getting into it, we have progressive disclosure. When we use the term progressive disclosure, we are trying to decode how users react when they are presented with a lot of information. And the psychology behind this is that you want to limit the amount of information you give or you present to users. You want to reduce them into smaller bits and pieces that makes it easier for your users to follow through and not be overwhelmed. Progressive disclosure, simply put, is an interaction design pattern that sequences information and actions across several screens. An example would be a step-by-step sign-up flow. And progressive disclosure is a concept that has been used for over a while now. We see that this concept has been in the works as early as the 1980s, where a couple of user interface specialists were able to make use of this psychology effectively in the year 1983. And at a practical level, they were able to realize or find out that when you encourage your users to move from completing simpler tasks or simpler actions, it makes it easy for them to move on to the complex tasks, as opposed to when you just present a very complex task to your users, because this can also make them feel very discouraged. A visual example here would be the step-by-step creation of a repository. We have the first step, the second step, and the third step. And we see the way from this UI, it's broken down into three steps, helping the users to go through this information bit by bit. Another example would also be the checkout process. Okay, so from your checkout, there's a different section to, let's say, input your card, select the kind of delivery you want, and then there's also the final step, which is confirming your order. Now, because these steps are broken down into chunks and smaller bits, we are able to carry out these tasks quite faster, and we don't end up delaying because there's so much that we are trying to do at the same time. The next one on our list would be a psychology that is quite rampant, usability effect. Now, so when your users are perceive attractive products, this is a concept that has happened to at certain point where you go to a site, and because of how clustered the site is with a lot of information, or because of how outdated and standoffish the UI is looking, you don't get to carry out what brought you there. You just get so annoyed at the way the UI is looking messy. Now, this reverse would be the case when you go to a site and then it's looking so appealing visually. You see that even when you're taking time trying to figure out what to do, you're doing it like calmly, because UI is already having this effect on you, since people believe that whatever looks very beautiful should work better, even if that is not always the case. So users have this emotional response to our visual design. This is why UX and UI go hand in hand. If you're trying to make a very attractive UI, or if you're trying to make an experience that is going to stand out, you also want to pair it with a visual appealing UI for your users to be able to stick more with you. There is an example of a usability testing that was carried out using the image or the visual seen on my screen. Now, if you look at it, this site made use of beautiful photography, I must say. The whole image and the concept of a mother and her kids is so calming and it's engaging. Now, if you look closely at this site, you'll find out that you might have issues actually reading the text or trying to figure out what the copy is trying to say, as well as the buttons. Usability testing was carried out using this site. A user had difficulties completing her tasks, but even at the end of the whole session, she rated this task that it was very easy to use. And when she was asked, she attributed that to the type of colors that they used. According to her, it looked like the ocean, and they made use of very good photography. So we see the effects visuals have on humans. We see psychological effects that it has on our users when we present them with a product, when we present them with a service that is visually appealing. It tends to draw them in, and they are more patient trying to carry out tasks. A perfect example of a service, of a brand, this effect to the advantage would be Apple. We all know Apple. Apple keeps on releasing updates upon updates upon updates. And if you pay attention, most of these updates that are being released, I wouldn't say are not so enormous, but we find out that something is always standing out: the aesthetics. Apple pays attention to even the closest effect that is meant to make their product stand out. And this is why they keep having increased amounts of users year after year, even as they keep on, releasing more products, in as much as they keep on releasing more updates. So this is a very perfect example of the competitive advantage when we pay attention to aesthetics. The next one on our list would be the color psychology or use of color. Now, this is a psychology that we are familiar with, okay? Because we all use colors when designing. At any point in time, even when we were starting out, where we tend to, just splash colors around, till when we start going further in our journey, when we start paying attention to the sort of colors we use, all this taken into consideration lets us see that several factors should be taken, or several factors should be looked at when we're trying to choose colors for our designs. The reason being that color is a very important aspect in your design. You'd agree with me that when you use a very bad choice of color, you get to repel your users. It's no longer attractive to them. So color is one principle, or color is one factor that can help and enhance the aesthetic appeal of your design. And colors has also been known to communicate different meanings and emotions, which is why we have a couple of colors and the different meanings that they have. But today we'll be looking at these colors and how they relate to design. And we have a couple like red. In the world of visuals, red as a color is often used when we're trying to warn users against making a decision that they can't turn back, a decision that cannot be reversed. For instance, deleting your account. or canceling your order. Now, in a case where you try to use a color like red, or you try to use a color like blue when it gets to making such dangerous decisions, your users might not really pay heed, and they might end up making a decision that they would blame you for it. So we make use of colors when we try to warn our users, we try to draw their attention to important elements. And then colors like orange are widely seen in food brands because they've been known to convey excitement and positivity, which keeps your audience excited. We also have the colors like blue, which are used in banking apps, products. The reason being that color has been known to, leave an impression of security, an impression of safety among the users. So when I go to an app and then I see this app using this color blue, it gives me that sense of trust, like I'm entrusting you guys with my money. We have piggyverse, for instance. And then we also have colors like green, which is used to indicate when our transaction has been successful. Let's say you just finished funding your wallet and there was no confirmation message. You might be confused or lost. And in cases where you might even end up funding your wallet again, that's for people that have money, plenty money. Yeah, so we make use of green when we are trying to indicate that either a transaction or an action was carried out successfully, and this helps to reassure our users. The next on our list would be cognitive penetration. Cognitive penetration is the capacity of a mental process to be influenced by the individual's knowledge, beliefs, or goals. So when we look at this, we are meant to understand that a lot of persons, their view on how things work in the world is based on their experience, or is based on their beliefs, either religiously, culturally, or even based on the goals they have set in place for themselves. And we have an example of cognitive penetration. We have this image showing three different races or three different groups of people. Now, if you look at this image, in as much as the features or each face is having the same color, we actually would say the first image is a black person. Why? Because this person has the features of an African American, and we already perceive this set of people as the blacks, okay, as opposed to how we view the Latinos, as opposed to how we view even the Asians. Now, this is a perfect example of what we've been meant to believe, and this is why most people comment such as, "Oh, you don't look like a black person," because they assume that as a black person you're supposed to look dark. That is how they believe, or that is what they've been made to believe. And now looking at cognitive load refers to the amount of working memory resources that is used. The amount of time your user spends trying to understand what is going on accumulates their cognitive load, which is why we are being taught that expectations and mental states can influence what we experience. Now, this is a perfect example. Those of us who were on Twitter, let's say last week or so, would remember this image. This was the design that got designed Twitter in some kind of chaos, where a lot of persons were debating on the fact that, oh, users do not read, and that is why they couldn't identify that this was actually a dishwash, or it was actually a product that was meant to not be taken in or digested. Yeah, users do not read, but then if you look at this, that comes to your mind is a yogurt. Okay, so it doesn't make sense that you decide to use for yogurt for a dishwash, because users already believe that once I see this package, I'm thinking of a yogurt. Now, in a household where there are kids, they could easily take this because, of course, they can't really read. And now we'll be looking at the methods for reducing cognitive loads. We have a couple of methods, though they are not restricted to what I have right now. You can always make more findings on your own. The first one would be avoiding unnecessary elements. Why is it important for us to avoid When we avoid unnecessary elements in our design, we help our users stay focused. If that element is not meant to be shown at that particular time, or if it is not going to help your users improve what it is they came to do at that particular time on your site, it's best that you take it out, because it will only distract them. It wouldn't help them in any. Now, when we look at leveraging common design patterns, there are several design patterns that are widely known and broadly used in the UX field. And these design patterns are general approaches in design that are used to solve common usability problems. When we adopt these common design patterns, we can take advantage of them and increase the use of our products. We can take be the design pattern where users are able to retrace their step, or maybe after trying to fill the form, and also the confirmation as well, where users get to see or confirm that, okay, they actually took this action or this transaction was actually successful. We also want to eliminate unnecessary tags. When we get rid of extra or unnecessary options, we are more likely to see conversions rather than drop-offs in our products. And then this will help us to create a better experience, because it's an effective way to reduce user frustrations. There's nothing more frustrating than when you're on the site and unnecessary tasks keep popping up, like surveys, quizzes. Most of the times we don't even get to do what we went to that site to carry out. So when we have and functional designs, we'll be able to remove any complexity that is not needed at that point in time. You also want to minimize the choices you're offering to users. We know we want users to have a wide range of choices. We want them to be able to make these choices themselves. It's important that we recall or remember that less is more. When we give our users too many choices, it makes it less likely for them to take any action. Why? Because they will spend time going over these choices over and over again. And even when they make their decision, they might not even be satisfied, because they may be thinking that, oh, the other choice would have been a better one for me. A maximum set of maybe four choices, or even three at most, is ideal when it comes to decision making. This way, we reduce the time that is spent trying to go over each choice, and we also increase the speed and the manner in which our users complete the tasks that they came to our sites, that they came to our product, that they came to our service for. We also want to display choices as a group. When we group certain elements together, based on how they look similar, either by color or by shapes, this process will help our users keep this information that is related in a way that they will be able to make choices easily. And one aspect that has proven effective would be making use of drop downs. Now we see that when we go to a site, choices are categorized under drop downs. Maybe you want to buy stuff for women, you want to buy things for kids, you want to buy things for men. If you go to any e-commerce site, you see that this set of choices displayed as a group rather than having everything everywhere at once. You also want to strive for readability. Now, readability determines how easy it is to read your content, how easy it is to read your text. This aspect or this method is very important, because when we aim for readability, we are able to have high or increased retention amongst our users, because this will enable our users to understand the information that we are trying to pass across to them without breaking a sweat, without going through so much. In cases where your text is not really legible to read, let's say you're not using contrasted background with your text, it will make it very difficult for your users to try to figure out what your content is all about. We also want to take into consideration set of users that have issues like maybe color blindness, or even users who make use of computers, who make use of systems that may not be able to display certain colors properly. Now, when we do this, this will help improve the user experience, because when I come to your site and I'm able to read with ease, it will help me carry out whatever action I need to carry out faster. You also want to make use of iconography with caution. We know that iconography is meant or is used to more functional, okay, help your designs look more visually appealing. But we also want to bear in mind that icons should be recognizable. It's one thing to make use of icons that people understand, that people are familiar with. It's another thing to make use of icons that people don't even know what it stands for. Now, we have some common examples like the home icon, which is house, or the search icon, which is represented by a magnifying glass. Now, in cases where you try to use something like maybe a space of land or an object like an appliance to signify home, it could be quite confusing because your users are not used to those icons. So we want to use iconography that, one, users are familiar with. We also want to make sure that we label these icons so that your users don't start overthinking what they stand for. Though, of course, we know that there are some icons that are already well known or widely known, like a couple that I've mentioned already, or even icons like the icon for Twitter, the icon for Instagram or Facebook. Now, this icon has been repeatedly used over time, that anywhere you see a Facebook icon, you know it stands for Facebook. So we want to ensure that our icons are, because this is when it's going to increase the functionality of our designs. Your users do not think as you think. You'd also record this example. Now, this particular image caused a kind of like controversy because a lot of persons felt like you should know this was a body wash. You should be able to read that this was a body wash. But looking at it closely, the body wash is located at the bottom and it's quite isolated from other text, which makes it looks like maybe it's not something you should pay attention to. It's not something that is really important. It wouldn't hurt if they were to replace the text pampering with the body wash, because the ability and help users know what they're actually going for without having to read everything that it is on the label. So we want to understand that we are the designers and the supposedly educated ones. We want to make it our duty. We want to take into consideration that not everyone has the time or the liberty to keep reading through every product that they see on the shelf. So we want to take these certain persons into considerations. You want to let your users breathe, okay? Now, bad things happen when people make mistakes, especially diligent persons. There are times when we see some brands, we see some products making some kind of mistakes that you feel like, oh, this should actually be past these people. They shouldn't actually get to do this, you know, they should know more. But then this happens when we tend to neglect certain design laws and principles. And these principles are not just put in place for fancy, right? They are not just there for show. They are there for us to actually study them, not in them, trying to see how we can actually put them into practice to improve the way we approach design, to improve the way we approach functionality, both from a user standpoint and even from a business standpoint. Okay, I think that would be the end of my. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, we can